So here's the thing about deep space cargo runs. They're supposed to be boring. You haul bulk containers of synthetic fabric from point A to point B. You collect your paycheck. And you absolutely do not crash land on uncharted planets in the ass end of the galaxy. But Commander Jake Reeves had never been great at following the script. The cargo ship Prometheus made contact with Kepler 442b's surface at what Pete Donovan, the ship's engineer, generously called a controlled descent, and what Jake more accurately described as a spectacular failure of literally everything. Mayday, Mayday, this is cargo vessel Prometheus. Jake spoke into the comm unit while alarms screamed around them. We've suffered catastrophic engine failure and are going down on Kepler 442b, requesting immediate assistance. Also, if anyone's listening, our cargo was insured, so don't worry about the synthetic underwear we were hauling. That's a total loss. Pete looked up from where he was frantically trying to reroute power. Did you just specify that we're losing a shipment of underwear? Transparency is important in crisis situations, Pete. The ship hit the ground with a crunch that suggested their insurance premiums were about to go way up. Sparks flew. Something exploded in a shower of colorful but probably toxic sparks. And then, silence. Pete unbuckled himself and ran a diagnostic on his tablet. Okay, good news and bad news. Good news is we're alive. Bad news is the engine is scattered across approximately half a mile of alien terrain. Our main comm array is toast, and the emergency beacon is working, but we're so far off the shipping lanes that rescue is going to take 6 months. Minimum. Jake stood up, cracked his neck, and looked out the cracked viewport at the purple and orange landscape beyond. 6 months. 6 months. On an uncharted planet. Technically it's charted. It's just that the chart says probably not worth visiting in big red letters. Jake walked to the emergency locker and started pulling out supplies. Ration packs, water purification tablets, a portable shelter kit that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never actually been camping. Well, Pete, looks like we're having an extended vacation. I hope you brought your golf clubs. I hate golf. And you. Mostly you right now. They spent the next hour doing what any sensible crash survivors would do. Taking inventory, checking for injuries, and arguing about whose fault it was. For the record, it was definitely the fault of the meteor storm they'd tried to navigate through. But Jake enjoyed watching Pete get defensive about his piloting skills. The planet itself was actually kind of beautiful, in a weird alien way. Purple grass that swayed in a breeze that smelled like cinnamon. Orange trees with leaves that spiraled instead of laying flat. 2 suns in the sky, one yellow and one that had a slightly pink tint. And the wildlife. Oh, the wildlife. Jake, are you seeing this? Pete was pointing at a cluster of bushes about 20 yards from the crash site. Something was watching them. Something small, furry, and equipped with approximately 6 legs too many. Is that thing cute or terrifying? Jake squinted. I genuinely cannot tell. The creature emerged fully from the bushes. It was about the size of a house cat, covered in silvery blue fur, with 6 legs and a face that looked like someone had tried to draw a puppy from memory and gotten the proportions slightly wrong. It had huge eyes. Like, comically huge. It's definitely cute, Pete decided. Terrifying would have more teeth. As if on cue, the creature opened its mouth and revealed 3 rows of tiny, needle-sharp teeth. Okay, cute and terrifying. The duality of alien life. The creature made a sound that was somehow between a purr and a chirp, then turned and waddled away on its too many legs. Was that thing purring at us? Pete asked. I think it was. Either that or it was revving up to eat us and decided we looked too gamey. More movement in the trees. Something larger this time. Moving through the branches with quick, jerky motions. Then on the ground, something genuinely massive was creating tremors as it walked. Jake and Pete looked at each other. So, Jake said slowly, 6 months with the local wildlife. 6 months. I'm sure they're all friendly. Statistically speaking, at least one of those species probably wants to eat us. That's the spirit, Pete. Always look on the bright side. Jake shouldered his pack of supplies. Come on, let's set up camp and figure out how we're going to not die for half a year. I'm thinking we start with shelter, then move on to food, then maybe work our way up to figuring out which of these alien critters sees us as friends versus lunch. You know what the worst part is? Pete asked, as they started walking toward a clearing that looked relatively safe. The fact that we're stranded? No. The fact that I was 2 weeks away from vacation when we crashed. I was going to go to Earth. Real beaches. Real food. Real gravity that doesn't make my knees click weird. Look at it this way, Jake said, gesturing at the alien landscape around them. This is basically a vacation. Fresh air, natural beauty, absolutely no crowds. Also no Wi-Fi, no pizza, and a non-zero chance of being eaten by whatever that big thing in the distance is. Details, Pete. You're focusing too much on the details. The first full day on Kepler 442b taught Jake and Pete two important lessons. 1. The planet's rotational period was 26 hours, which meant they got an extra 2 hours to contemplate their poor life choices. And 2. The local wildlife had absolutely zero respect for personal space. Jake woke up to find 3 of the 6-legged furballs sitting on his chest, staring at him with those enormous eyes. They were purring, or humming, or possibly charging up some kind of biological weapon. Hard to say. Pete, wake up. We have visitors. Pete rolled over in his sleeping bag and immediately yelped. There were 5 more of the creatures arranged in a perfect circle around his head. What the hell are these things? I'm calling them fluffers. Seems appropriate. You're naming the potentially deadly alien wildlife? Would you prefer I call them Xenomorph Variant 442A? One of the fluffers on Jake's chest leaned forward and booped his nose with its own tiny nose. Then it made that purr-chirp sound again, and Jake felt an overwhelming wave of sleepiness wash over him. Oh no. Oh, that's not good. His eyes started closing involuntarily. Pete, I think they're weaponized. What? The purring. It's some kind of sonic frequency. That makes you. Jake's head slumped back down. Within seconds he was snoring. Pete watched in horror as all 8 fluffers started purring in unison, and he felt his own consciousness slipping away. His last thought before passing out was that this was a really stupid way to die. They woke up 4 hours later, completely unharmed except for their wounded pride. The fluffers were gone, but they'd left behind what appeared to be gifts. Small piles of local fruits and something that looked disturbingly like the missing energy bars from their supply pack. Did they rob us and then feel bad about it? Pete held up a half-eaten ration bar. I think they're trying to trade. Or apologize. Honestly, at this point I'll take either. That's when they heard the chattering. Up in the orange trees, dozens of small shapes were moving through the branches at high speed. They looked like someone had taken a monkey, added an extra set of arms, and then gave it the personality of a magpie. They had sleek, dark fur and long tails they used for balance. And they were very interested in the shiny wreckage of the Prometheus. Oh, come on, Jake muttered as he watched one of the creatures pry a metal panel off the ship's hull. That's our stuff. Was our stuff, Pete corrected. I think it's their stuff now. One of the creatures swung down from a branch and landed right in front of them. It had bright green eyes and was clutching a piece of broken mirror like it was the most precious thing in the universe. It held it up, tilted its head, and made a questioning sound. You want to trade for that? Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar wrapper. It was crinkly and reflective. The creature's eyes went wide. The trade happened so fast Jake barely saw it. The creature snatched the wrapper, handed over the mirror piece, and chittered excitedly before racing back up into the trees. Within minutes, a dozen more of them had descended, all carrying various pieces of salvage and all very interested in trading for shiny garbage. Grabbits, Jake announced. I'm calling them grabbits. Because they grab things? See, you're catching on to my naming system. They spent the next hour establishing what Pete called basic economic principles and what Jake called bribing monkeys with trash. The grabbits would bring them useful salvage in exchange for anything shiny and worthless. Foil wrappers, broken glass, even a cracked datapad screen had them chittering with joy. You realize we're exploiting the local labor force, Pete said, watching a grabbit carefully carry a functional power cell down from where it had been lodged in a tree. I prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial trade relations. They get shiny things that make them happy. We get the pieces of our ship back. Everyone wins. The ground started shaking. Earthquake? Pete grabbed onto a tree for stability. I don't think so. It's too rhythmic. The shaking got stronger. Closer. And then they saw it. It was huge. Easily the size of an elephant. But built like someone had started with a cow and then decided it needed to be more geometrical. Its body was covered in thick, rocky-looking plates that gave it the appearance of a walking boulder. It had 4 tree-trunk legs, a small head with gentle eyes, and it was making a low, rumbling sound that Pete felt in his bones. That's a chonker, Jake said immediately. You can't just keep naming things based on what they look like. Watch me. The chonker lumbered past them, completely ignoring their existence. It stopped at a patch of the purple grass, lowered its head, and started eating. The sound was like a lawnmower made of rocks. It's an herbivore, Pete observed. That's good. One less thing trying to kill us. It's also huge and could step on us by accident. Add it to the be respectful of list. A baby chonker emerged from behind its parent. It was the size of a large dog and somehow even more boulder-like than the adult. It looked at Jake and Pete, made a sound like grinding gravel, and then went back to following its parent. "Okay," Jake said, watching the chonkers, the grabbits in the trees, and the fluffers that had started returning to investigate the commotion. "So we've got sleeping gas cats, thieving monkeys, and walking mountains. This is fine. This is a totally normal situation. We're going to die here," Pete said cheerfully. "Not with that attitude, we're not. Look, they're all herbivores, or at least not immediately trying to eat us. That's a win. The fluffers seem friendly when they're not knocking us unconscious. The grabbits are already helping us salvage parts, and the chonkers are just vibing. We can work with this." "Work with this how?" Jake looked at the creatures, then at their crashed ship, then back at Pete. A grin slowly spread across his face. "You grew up on a farm, right?" "Yeah, but these aren't cows, Jake. These are alien life forms on an uncharted planet. All animals respond to food and positive reinforcement. It's basic behavioral psychology. That's not how xenobiology works," says the guy who studied engineering, not xenobiology. Pete sighed. "I hate that you're probably right. Also, I really hate this planet. Give it time. It'll grow on you." A fluffer chose that moment to waddle over and drop a piece of fruit at Pete's feet, then sit back expectantly like a dog waiting for a treat. "Or they'll grow on you," Jake amended. "Either way, we've got 6 months. Might as well make friends." Turns out, Jake was right. Pete hated that even more than being stranded. Week 1 was all about testing boundaries. The fluffers responded to food rewards like they'd been reading Earth psychology textbooks. Jake started with simple tasks. "Bring me that wrench." Success. Followed by dried fruit. "Bring me that metal panel." Success. Another treat. By day 5, they had 3 fluffers playing fetch with ship parts like the world's weirdest retriever dogs. "This is unethical," Pete said, watching a fluffer named Pudge, because Jake insisted on naming them individually now. Drag a toolbox twice its size across the clearing. "Pudge is having the time of his life. Look at him. That's joy." Pudge dropped the toolbox, did a little spin, and chirped expectantly. Jake tossed him a piece of fruit. Pudge caught it midair with his mouth and all 3 rows of teeth disappeared into happiness. "Fine. It's adorable. I admit nothing further." The grabbits were even easier. They already understood trade. Pete just had to formalize it. He set up a sorting system using salvaged containers. Shiny non-essential items in one box earned them aluminum foil balls. Useful components in another box earned them actual mirrors. Within 2 weeks, they had an assembly line of grabbits sorting through wreckage, organized by what Pete called material value, and what the grabbits called shininess hierarchy. One grabbit, who Jake named Fingers for obvious reasons, figured out how to open supply crates. Pete promoted him to supervisor. Fingers took his job very seriously, chattering at other grabbits who tried to pocket the good salvage. "We've created a management structure," Pete said, equal parts impressed and horrified. "They have a boss now. Capitalism finds a way." The chonkers were the surprise success story. Week 8, Pete was trying to fix their water filtration system when one of the babies wandered over and sneezed directly onto his workstation. The sneeze produced a fine mist that smelled sweet. Pete, being Pete, tasted it. Jake, come here right now. If you're dying from alien mucus, I'm not helping. Taste this." Jake approached cautiously, then tried the droplets Pete had collected. His eyes went wide. "Is that vanilla?" "It's not vanilla, it's alien nose milk. But it tastes exactly like vanilla latte." They looked at each other. They looked at the baby chonker, who was now nuzzling Pete's leg affectionately. They looked back at each other. "We could," Jake started. "Absolutely not. Hear me out. No." By week 10, they had 4 adult chonkers who would voluntarily approach twice a day for scratches behind their rocky ear plates. In exchange, they'd let Jake and Pete collect the sweet-smelling secretions they naturally produced. Turns out it wasn't sneezing. It was a cooling mechanism. And yes, it tasted exactly like vanilla latte when mixed with water. "We're dairy farmers now," Pete said flatly, holding a container of fresh chonker secretion. "On an alien planet, collecting nose milk from rock cows. Technically it's not from their nose. It's from specialized glands near there. I don't want to know the anatomy, Jake. I want to go home. 3 more months." Pete looked around their camp. Fluffers were napping in a pile near the fire. Grabbits were chattering in the trees, playing with their foil balls during break time. Chonkers were grazing peacefully, the babies occasionally wandering over for attention. Their shelter had evolved from a basic tent to an actual structure. with walls made from ship panels and a roof that didn't leak. You know what the worst part is? Pete asked. What? This is the most organized my life has ever been. I have a routine. I wake up, feed the fluffers, check on the grab-it salvage operation, milk the rock cows, and work on repair projects. It's almost nice. Almost? It's still stupid. Jake was quiet for a moment, staring at their little settlement. Hey, Pete, you know what would be really funny? No. Whatever you're thinking. No. What if we opened a café? Pete turned slowly. What? Think about it. We've got vanilla latte material. We've got a workforce. We've got time. We could actually do it. Jake, there's no one here to serve. Not yet. But in 3 months, that rescue ship is going to show up. Imagine their faces when they find us running a functional business. Pete stared at him. Then at their camp. Then at the chonker milk. A slow, terrible smile spread across his face. That's the dumbest idea you've ever had. Is that a yes? Get me a hammer and some panel sealant. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. By week 12, the crash landing cafe was taking shape. They'd repurposed the cargo bay door as a counter, built tables from storage crates, even made a sign using bioluminescent moss they'd found that glowed at night. The fluffers had learned to greet visitors, which was currently just Pete walking through the door repeatedly for training purposes. The grabbits cleaned tables in exchange for bottle caps, and the chonkers provided fresh milk every morning and evening. They'd created a menu. Chonker vanilla lattes, protein bars made from local edible vegetation that didn't taste terrible, something they called mystery meat that was actually just seasoned plant protein, but the name made them laugh. We need a currency, Jake announced one evening. We're the only humans on the planet. Doesn't matter. Every good cafe has a payment system. They settled on colorful stones from the nearby stream. Pete created an exchange rate chart. Jake made a tip jar. They were doing latte art for an audience of fluffers who couldn't drink caffeine. We've lost our minds, Pete said, watching Jake perfect a foam heart on a cup of chonker milk latte. Lost implies we ever had them. I prefer to think we found clarity. Clarity. We're entrepreneurs now, Pete. Small business owners. The rescue ship is going to arrive, and instead of finding desperate survivors, they're going to find a thriving economy. Pete looked at their cafe, at the domesticated aliens lounging around, at the ridiculous menu board, at Jake, who was genuinely proud of his latte art. You know what? Fine. We're doing this. But when the Galactic Council arrests us for breaking first contact protocols, I'm blaming you. Deal. Now try this new recipe. I think I've perfected the foam ratio. Month 5. The crash landing cafe had its grand opening. The fact that there were no customers was, as Jake put it, a minor detail in an otherwise perfect business plan. They'd gone all in. The salvaged cargo bay door now had a proper counter with a functioning espresso machine Pete had engineered from spare parts and pure spite. Tables with actual chairs, bolted together from storage crates and cushioned with dried purple grass. Mood lighting courtesy of that bioluminescent moss arranged in tasteful patterns. The place looked genuinely good. We need uniforms, Jake had announced week 18. We absolutely do not. They made uniforms. Aprons constructed from cargo netting and decorated with the cafe logo, which was a coffee cup with a crashed spaceship steaming out of it. Pete said engineer. Jake said management. Both were completely unnecessary and they wore them every single day. The staff had their roles down perfectly. Pudge and 2 other fluffers, Biscuit and Muffin, worked as greeters. They'd learned to do a little sit and chirp routine whenever someone approached the door. The someone was always either Jake or Pete pretending to be a customer. But the fluffers didn't know that. They were professionals. Fingers led a team of 5 grabbits as busboys. They'd clear tables, wipe surfaces with rags, and return dishes to the kitchen area. In exchange, they got their wages paid in bottle caps and foil, which they'd stash in individual pouches Pete had sewn for them. Fingers kept a particularly shiny bottle cap on a string around his neck. Middle management was treating him well. The chonkers were the stars. They'd show up like clockwork twice daily at the dairy station, which was really just a covered area with scratching posts. Mama Chonk, Papa Chonk, and their 3 babies, Pebble, Boulder, and the Asset, because Jake insisted one needed a dramatic name. They'd get their scratches, provide their secretions, and lumber off to graze. Perfect employees. Never complained. Never asked for raises. We need to do a soft opening, Pete said, reviewing their prep checklist. Pete, we're on an uninhabited planet. Uninhabited by humans. We've got plenty of inhabitants. He gestured at the fluffers napping in the corner booth. They deserve to experience the full service. So they did it, full service, treating the local wildlife like actual customers. Pudge got a tiny cup of water with a chonker milk foam heart on top. He tried to eat the cup. Fingers and his team got a platter of their favorite fruits, arranged artistically. They immediately destroyed the arrangement, fighting over the shiniest piece. The chonkers got extra scratches and a new salt lick Pete had synthesized. Jake stood behind the counter, wiping down surfaces that were already clean. You know what we're missing? Sanity, a way home, literally any real customers. A backstory. Every good cafe has a story. They spent the next week developing lore. The Crash Landing Cafe, established 5 months ago by 2 visionary entrepreneurs who definitely meant to crash here. Our philosophy: fresh ingredients, locally sourced, sustainably harvested. Our mission: to bring quality coffee experiences to the frontier of space. Our values: we treat our employees with respect, our ingredients with care, and our customers with the service they deserve. This is insane, Pete said, reading the mission statement they'd carved into a wood panel. This is branding. They created a loyalty program using their colored stone currency. Collect 10 stones, get your 11th drink free. Never mind that they'd never sold 10 drinks. The system was in place. They developed seasonal specials: morning crash blend, afternoon debris roast, evening wreckage decaf, which was just chonker milk because they didn't actually have coffee. But the names were solid. Pete built a register system that tracked inventory they didn't sell and revenue they didn't make. Jake created a social media strategy for platforms they couldn't access. They were running a complete business simulation for an audience of 0 humans and dozens of aliens who had no concept of commerce beyond shiny thing good. We should do latte art competitions, Jake suggested during week 22. Against who? Each other. Keep our skills sharp. They did. Every morning. Foam hearts, rosettas, tulips. Pete got weirdly competitive about it. They kept score on a chalkboard. Jake was winning 14-12, though Pete claimed 3 of those were structurally unsound and shouldn't count. The cafe became their entire world. They'd open at dawn, even though no one was coming. Prep ingredients, clean equipment, train staff. Fingers got promoted to assistant manager after he successfully taught a younger Grabbit the proper table wiping technique. Pudge became head of customer relations, which involved him greeting his own reflection in the mirror every morning with enthusiasm. You realize when the rescue ship gets here, we're going to look completely unhinged, Pete said one evening, closing out the register that had never seen a real transaction. Or, Jake countered, we're going to look like we've successfully established humanity's first interstellar cafe franchise. That's the same thing. Your lack of vision is why I'm management and you're engineering. I engineered this entire operation, and I managed it beautifully. They'd created schedules, employee handbooks, health and safety protocols for a kitchen that served no one. They had a comment card system. The fluffers had chewed most of them, but the system existed. They'd done inventory counts, profit-loss statements with imaginary numbers, and quarterly reviews where Jake gave Fingers feedback on his leadership style. Week 23. Pete stood in the middle of the cafe during closing and just looked around. Jake, we built something actually good here. I know. Like, if this was Earth, people would come here. It's a legitimately nice cafe. I know. We're never going to live this down, are we? Probably not. They high-fived anyway. The rescue ship was due in 1 week. The rescue ship arrived on schedule, which was more than could be said for the Prometheus 6 months earlier. Captain Yara Okonkwo had seen a lot in her 20 years of deep space rescue operations. She'd pulled survivors from radiation zones, toxic atmospheres, and one memorable incident involving a pirate attack in a cargo hold full of extremely angry space geese. But she'd never seen anything quite like this. The distress beacon led them to Kepler 442b's surface. Sensors showed 2 human life signs. Strong vital readings, no signs of distress. In fact, the biometric data suggested they were thriving. That was unusual. Prepare landing team, Yara ordered. Standard rescue protocol, medical bay on standby. Beside her, Galactic Council observer Thrax made a disapproving clicking sound. He was a Zentari, built like a praying mantis if a praying mantis went to law school and developed a personality based entirely on regulations. This planet is designated preserve status, uncontacted ecosystem. These humans have been here for 6 months without supervision. They crashed, Thrax. Not exactly planned. Nevertheless, protocols may have been violated. The rescue shuttle touched down near the crash site. What they found made Yara stop mid-step. There was a building, an actual structure with walls, a roof, and a sign made of glowing moss that read, "The Crash Landing Café. Grand Opening Special. 20% off all drinks." What in the actual, Yara started. A six-legged creature with too many teeth and enormous eyes waddled up to them, sat down, and made a chirping sound that felt suspiciously like a greeting. "Captain Okonkwo," a human voice called out. Jake emerged from the building wearing a cargo net apron. "Welcome, party of, let's see, looks like 6? Right this way. We've got a table ready." Thrax's antennae quivered with rage. "What is the meaning of this?" Pete appeared behind the counter, also aproned. "What's it look like? We're running a business. Can I get you started with drinks? Our Chonker Vanilla Latte is the house special." Yara's medical officer, Dr. Lin, stepped forward with a scanner. "Sirs, we need to check you for psychological trauma, malnutrition, and exposure-related illnesses." "We're fine," Jake said. "But if you want to check us, order something first. House rules." "This is unconscionable." Thrax pushed past them into the cafe, then stopped. The interior was pristine, tables arranged with care, a menu board with prices in colored stones. 4-armed monkey creatures were wiping down surfaces. A massive rock-plated beast was visible through a window, grazing peacefully while smaller versions played nearby. "You've domesticated the native species," Thrax breathed. "You've violated first contact protocols, exploitation regulations, and at least 15 environmental protection statutes." "Actually," Pete said, pulling out a tablet, "we've been documenting everything. Full behavioral studies, interaction logs, and consent frameworks." "Consent frameworks? They're animals. They're intelligent beings with clear communication patterns and autonomous decision-making capabilities. Also, they're co-owners." Jake gestured at Fingers, who was organizing bottle caps. "Profit-sharing structure. Everyone gets paid." Yara sat down at a table because her legs weren't working properly anymore. "Let me get this straight. You crashed. You domesticated 3 alien species. You built a cafe, and you created an employee compensation system." The compensation was Pete's idea. I wanted to keep it simple, but he insisted on ethical labor practices. "It's 2410. We have standards." One of the fluffers brought Yara a cup of something that smelled surprisingly like vanilla. She took a sip. Her eyes widened. "This is actually good. This, locally sourced, sustainably harvested, zero environmental impact." Pete rattled off. "The chonkers produce it as a natural cooling secretion. We've documented that collection doesn't harm them, and they voluntarily participate in exchange for scratching services and mineral supplements." "Doctor," Lin was scanning the fluffers. "Captain, these creatures are healthy. More than healthy. They're thriving. Enhanced nutrition, reduced stress markers, signs of enrichment activities." "That's Pudge," Jake said proudly. "He's our head of customer relations. Also, he knows 7 tricks now. Want to see him roll over?" Thrax was reading through Pete's documentation on his tablet, his antennae drooping further with each page. "This is the most comprehensive first-contact behavioral study I've ever seen. Cross-species communication models, nutritional analysis, social hierarchy documentation. We had 6 months and nothing else to do." Pete shrugged. "Also, Jake wouldn't stop insisting we needed proper records for when the health inspector showed up. There is no health inspector in deep space. Not with that attitude." Yara finished her latte. It was genuinely the best thing she'd tasted in months. "Okay, I need to understand the full situation. You're telling me that in 6 months, you successfully established peaceful contact with 3 species, domesticated them ethically, built functional infrastructure, and created a working business model. Also, we do latte art," Jake added. "Pete's getting pretty good. I'm better than you and you know it. Your Rosettas are structurally unsound." Thrax looked at Yara. Yara looked at her crew. Her crew looked at the fluffers, who were doing their greeting routine for the new visitors. "This is either the best first contact scenario in history," Yara said slowly, "or the most elaborate breakdown I've ever witnessed." "Can't it be both?" Jake asked cheerfully. Thrax spent the next hour citing regulations. He had a lot of them memorized. Unauthorized settlement, ecosystem interference, exploitation of indigenous species, cultural contamination. The list went on. Jake let him finish, then pulled out a second tablet. "Cool. So here's our defense. First, the crash was accidental. That's documented in our distress call. Second, all species interaction was initiated by them. We have logs. Third, exploitation requires coercion. These guys can leave any time." As if on cue, Fingers walked past carrying a bottle cap, completely ignored Thrax, and went back to his organizational duties. Furthermore, Pete added, we've been documenting everything for a reality show pitch called Castaways and Coffee. Full release forms, behind-the-scenes footage, the whole package. 6 months of content. Networks are going to love it. Thrax's antennae went rigid. You cannot monetize First Contact. We're not monetizing First Contact. We're monetizing our survival story that happened to involve First Contact. Completely different legal framework. Yara was trying very hard not to laugh. You cannot be serious. Episode 1 writes itself, Jake said. 2 idiots crash on an alien planet. By episode 12, they're running a small business with a diverse workforce. There's character development, conflict, a redemption arc for Fingers after he stole my wrench that one time. I'm putting this in my report, Thrax threatened. Please do. The publicity will be amazing. Dr. Lin had been running more scans. Captain, I need to show you something. The local species aren't just healthy. They're better off than when these two arrived. Improved nutrition, social enrichment, reduced predation stress. This is mutual benefit on both sides. That's because they're not employees, Pete explained. They're partners. Pudge gets mental stimulation and food security. We get help salvaging parts. Fingers gets shiny objects and management experience. We get organized salvage. The Chonkers get grooming and minerals. We get sustainable ingredient sourcing. Nobody's being exploited. They're co-owners, Jake repeated. Full profit sharing. Once we start making actual money, they get paid in premium food, enrichment activities, and continued care. We've got contracts and everything. They can't sign contracts. Paw prints count in 15 systems. We checked. Thrax looked at his own tablet, then at the café, then back at the tablet. This might be the most ethical First Contact scenario ever documented. Might be. It is. I hate that. I came here expecting violations and instead I'm looking at a model for interspecies cooperation. Yara stood up. All right. Here's what's happening. Thrax, you're filing a report that says these 2 crash survivors established peaceful, mutually beneficial contact with 3 indigenous species while awaiting rescue. Dr. Lin, you're documenting the health benefits for all parties involved. And you two. She pointed at Jake and Pete. You're going to train my crew on how to make these lattes because I'm buying 10 for the trip back. That'll be 8 colored stones, Jake said automatically. I'm not paying in rocks. Credit works too. We're flexible. The rescue team ended up staying for 3 hours. Yara's crew tried the food. Dr. Lin played fetch with Pudge and got emotional about it. Even Thrax grudgingly admitted the café had adequate structural integrity and surprisingly robust health standards. They were loading the last of the salvageable equipment onto the shuttle when the ground started shaking. A new ship was coming down. Badly. Trailing smoke. Amateur piloting. It crashed about 2 kilometers away. Pete and Jake looked at each other. No, Yara said immediately. Absolutely not. You're coming with us. That's potential customers, Jake said. That's a crew that needs rescue. We can do both. Pete was already pulling out supplies. They're going to be here for at least 6 months based on that damage. They'll need support. Community. Maybe employment opportunities. You're not staying here to run a cafe. Jake grabbed a menu and started walking toward the new crash site. We're not staying to run a cafe. We're staying to protect our market share. Big difference. Competition drives innovation, Pete added, following him. Plus, someone needs to make sure they don't violate any First Contact protocols. We're experienced now. Basically experts. Pete, Yara watched them go. Thrax made a sound that might have been a laugh or a systems error. Hard to tell with Zintari. Should we stop them? Dr. Lin asked. Could we stop them? Fair point. Pudge waddled after Jake and Pete, followed by Fingers and his crew. The Chonkers looked up from grazing, then slowly started following the group. One big, weird interspecies convoy heading toward the new crash site. Captain, one of her pilots said. What do we put in the report? Yara thought about it. Survivors recovered successfully. Psychological state excellent. Physical health optimal. Requested to remain on planet for extended research purposes. Request approved. That's not what happened. That's what's going in the report. Because if I tell Command the truth, they'll never believe me anyway. She took one last look at the crash landing cafe, its glowing sign visible even in the daylight. In the distance, she could see Jake waving at the new crash survivors. Pete was probably already planning expansion options. Set course for home, Yara ordered. And someone remind me to buy stock in whatever network picks up that reality show. It's going to be huge. The rescue ship lifted off, leaving behind 2 humans, 3 alien species, 1 thriving cafe, and the beginning of what would eventually become humanity's most successful and most bizarre interstellar franchise operation. Jake reached the new crash site and called out to the dazed survivors stumbling from their wrecked ship. "Welcome to Kepler 442b. Before you panic, just know that rescue takes about 6 months. But good news." He held up the menu with a grin. "We're hiring. Also, you like coffee?" Pete appeared beside him, tablet ready. "First drinks on the house. After that, we accept colored stones or credit. Your choice." The new survivors stared at them like they'd lost their minds. They probably had. But business was business.